That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And tonight we're here to talk about something a little different than we normally do.
Yep. Felt kind of weird to make more silly movie review videos when there's like a really big issue, a persistent, long-standing issue that I think deserves more attention than anything else we could say.
Yes, I agree. And in an effort to make it seem like it's not just business as usual, this isn't for likes or subscribers, or it's just, I think we both felt compelled to just have a conversation because that's what's dominated our household.
Yeah. So I think racial injustice in the United States, currently the sort of protest revolving around the murder of George Floyd.
Mm-hmm. And Breanna Taylor in Kentucky, and Ahmaud Arbery in
just countless
Georgia.
people. But yeah, I mean, I think being silent just feels like it doesn't feel right for us because I'm not normally silent. I think for a lot of people, silence is the norm, and it just equals being complicit. For us, that's not the case. But I think it did feel weird to make another review video without talking about this.
Right, and going beyond a little more than just posting,
making some basic social media posts, which we'll talk about. But I don't know where this is going. I don't know how long it's going to be. Where I wrote down some notes. I think a couple of things come to mind. I know we get a lot of comments from people being very aggressive and serious about the nonsensical things we say, and I feel like if people were half as invested in, defending fictional characters as they were being concerned about real people, we might get somewhere. So there's that. So we can just start with, some of the notes we made.
Yeah.
I think for me, the first thing I thought of was there's a Chris Rock joke where he's on stage and he tells the audience, like, no white person would want to switch places with a black person. And the joke is, no white person would want to switch places with me, and I'm rich. And I think that seems very relevant when I think about what you just said. And we both know a lot of white people who are posting a lot of things on social media. And it kind of just feels like, it seems like there's an awareness that there's a problem. Because I agree with what Chris says, that, what white person wants to switch to have the life of a black person, which means they have an understanding that there's some sort of inequality. But then there's nothing done.
Right.
So I've often wondered, how do people even go to bed at night and tuck their kids in and talk about all the goals and things they have for their families, knowing that other families are suffering. And it's hard because I think we can always reference people in other countries and who are struggling more than we are. But I think as, Americans, American citizens, residents of this country, we have an obligation to really do the best we can for the people who are here.
Mm-hmm. And the truth is we've never dealt with America's original sin, which was slavery.
Yeah. So another thing I'm thinking is when we talk about the system, I read something that really resonated with me, and it's the system isn't broken because the system was intended to protect the interest of white supremacist slave owners who are occupying land they stole from the indigenous people. So the system works well for them.
Yep, sure does.
But I think, like you said, until we acknowledge the original sin, until we acknowledge that this system is based on just so much hate and just selfishness, we aren't going to get anywhere. So for me, I think education is the biggest issue. Just, walking through this world, I'm 41 years old, meeting people younger than myself, it's clear to me that many people don't understand the history of this country and how black people fit into that. And we'll talk about this later, but I feel like it's not my job to educate every person I encounter who doesn't understand the pain many black people feel. It's too much of a burden. I can't do it. Everyone has a fucking cell phone with 5G making us all sick with coronavirus, but everyone has the ability to look up information. So I would just think you can simply type in racism in America, read the Wikipedia page entry, and if you finish that entry and you don't feel sick to your stomach and you don't empathize with the people who are angry and in pain right now, then you're just broken and there's nothing we can do for you. But education really is the key. It really, really is the key.
Yeah, and I know that I've read posts in various places about how ethnic studies should be mandatory at universities, but I think really this needs to start even earlier. This needs to start in elementary school.
And telling the real story.
Well, right, because even we were both talking earlier, learning even about Christopher Columbus, and I had an awareness in second grade before we were even taught that chapter of history that Columbus raped Indian women and chopped off hands and heads, and you get watered down versions of that.
As a black person, I was raised with racism being present, with my father, sort of indoctrinating me with the reality of my existence as I move forward. But I can distinctly recall moments where it really became clear to me, and I think Christopher Columbus is a good example. I remember thinking so this person hopped on this boat, came over here, took this land from these people who were already here. Nothing about it rang as correct, certainly not something we should be celebrating. But that's just the American way. This shit is built on the backs of people who were robbed, brutalized, raped, tortured, spreading disease everywhere. And it's just we're so proud. We're so proud of that we celebrate it.
And a continual revision of history to...
Yeah, calling slaves, making up new terms for what slavery was, making up new terms for lynchings, and it's too much for me to handle. And I can't, I just don't have the strength, and it's not my responsibility to explain to everyone. So educate yourself, look this shit up. If you're on YouTube right now, Google racism in America and watch a couple videos. Just do stuff. There's so many things. I mean, I can flash so many key things, but it's anything from understanding slavery, how black people black Africans ended up coming to the United States. When you talk about just so many things. I know I posted on my social media about the 3/5 compromise and Brown versus the Board of Education and interracial marriage laws and lynching laws and just countless things, the Tuskegee syphilis experiments. And there's a history that involves black people that if a person understands these, there is no way that you can witness what's happening now with the riots and the protests and the violence and not think that, it's not coming out of nowhere. That's my point. That's my biggest point. I just don't think people truly understand the history of black people in this country. So when we talk about police brutality, it's not just, this person was resisting arrest or this person shouldn't have been doing this. It goes way deeper than that. When you look into the prison system, all the laws that were intended to prevent black people from doing anything, going way, way back. Look at what an octoroon is. So many things were designed to keep black people from owning property, voting, the way we draw voting the lines for voting districts. That is all strategic.
Yeah.
It is all strategic.
And then if you bring into that the criminal justice system and how felons aren't able to vote and how there's an inordinate amount of
and if you don't believe the shit, then me saying it's not going to do anything, and we'll get to that, but that's my main thing. Educate yourself. If you're watching all of this confused, then you need to educate yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's your responsibility.
Well, confused or feeling hopeless, because I think even if you have an awareness, seeing all of this going on again, there's just this crushing sense of hopelessness. And I think us doing this and having a conversation, is in response to, I noticed a lot of white people posting things and they're in shock and awe. And I think at least both of our initial reactions was this is happening again, and in a very quick succession to two other very prominent deaths, murders.
So I think this is a good point to segue into white people and white people's roles in this and microaggressions and do you want to talk about microaggressions?
Microaggressions and white fragility?
Yes.
How about how white people become disgruntled or are made uncomfortable when we talk about social injustice and how they go out of their way to just not deal with it, which certainly is a problem. I also think that allyship performance is part of that. And I don't want to say, there are plenty of good people. This is how we communicate now through social media, and I get it. This is people. These are good intentions to have these there, but it often, to me, seems a lot like lip service, because it shouldn't just be a us being made aware of yet another murder of a black person at the hands of law enforcement for us to be up in arms. As a white person, what are you doing every other day of the month, of the year? How are you calling attention to this systemic issue? Because otherwise, it is allyship performance. And also being an ally means you're just doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing for somebody that's not like you. You shouldn't have to, and we were having this discussion earlier too, as a gay person, LGBTQIA, I don't think that there should be an A in that acronym just for doing the right thing. That's humanity. So you shouldn't, it's not about you as a white person. It's not about, you shouldn't get a gold star for doing the right thing or saying the right thing. But this needs to be happening just consciously, subconsciously. White people need to do better.
My addition to that point is, again, good intentions. Like, I do see a lot of posts from white people, BLM posts and, justice for George Floyd, and the intention is there. But I often wonder, like, what is your connection to the black community? Do you have any black friends? Do you interact with black people? Do you understand how black people live? Or is it just something that you see on the TV, and now that it's, affecting a neighborhood close to you, now you feel like you need to do something? I would encourage people who don't have, going back to something I said earlier today to you, was like, I think embracing cultural diversity across the board is like nutrition. Like, you need a well-balanced diet. You can't just subsist off of your white bread and your mayonnaise and your cucumber sandwiches and think that you are going to be healthy and strong. Like, you need diversity, and that means reaching out to people, not trying to,
it's not just, don't just go make a black friend.
No, you're not a missionary. You're not trying to spread anything. You are just trying to, understand people's experience. People just need a witness to their experience. And when you don't participate in that, it's like, well, how would you know? Right. And how do you not know that you're not the problem?
I think white people, I've met a lot of white people that have trouble with terminology. They don't want to say black.
As a brown person, I do feel like watching... It's very obvious to me when certain white people are very uncomfortable around people of color. And I think it's just being uncomfortable using that language. This makes me think of, like... poor Rachel Dolezal, she's problematic for many reasons.
Sure.
But I think, like, at her core, she really was, if we want to talk about an ally, this woman really was trying to walk that walk. And it just makes me think, like, don't we wish that... I would certainly prefer to have more Rachel Dolezal in the world than that damn police officer who killed George Floyd.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. Is this where we want to talk about white gays as well?
Well, intersectionality, yeah. So I think, I can only really speak for the things that I've experienced. So, I don't want to speak for white people, but what I will say is my first big thing is, like, appropriating black culture. So for all you people out there appropriating black culture who are not black, where y'all at? Like, all the Justin Timberlakes and I have a grudge against him, so that's why I mentioned his name. But, it seems like everyone wants to be black. Because being black is great. It's beautiful. It's lit. Like, it's all the things, right? Like, everyone wants to be black. You want the asses and the lips, and you want the swag, and you want the style, you want the music. You want everything except the struggle. And for me, that's a problem. It's a problem. So what I can speak to specifically is that I can speak to, speaking about being... The closer you are to the problem, the more blind you are to it. So as a black gay man, I feel like white gay men... A lot like white women are, I think a lot of white gay men think that they're exempt from the idea that they might have racist ideals or, shouldn't be responsible for participating in the sort of advancement of the equality of anyone but themselves. No one has a pass. Black people don't have a pass. We all need to do the best we can to make sure there's equality for everyone. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. Do you have something to add about that?
And I think also white people consuming black culture that have no idea what they're talking about or respecting what they're talking about. I think we were talking about Beyonce's Formation earlier.
Yeah, I think it's like, enjoying some black art, like a Beyonce. Everyone who wouldn't love Beyonce? If you're a white person who thinks that you are somehow contributing to, like, the movement because you liked Formation, that's not how that works. That's not how that works. Oh, I did want to add that. I also want to say, for all you non-white people, or I'm sorry, for all you non-black people who like to use the N-word, like when I'm out in these streets and I see these Hispanic kids and these Asian kids using the N-word, even these white kids using the N-word, I don't know how anyone fixes their mouth to use that word today. I'm certainly not going to tell another black person they can't use it, but for all you non-black people who like to use that word, where y'all at? Mm-hmm. Like, it just bothers me so much. And I often think about the interview Oprah did with Jay-Z, where they talked about the use of that word. And I feel exactly the way Oprah does. Whenever I hear that word being used, particularly by someone who's not black, all I can think about is black men being lynched, hung from trees, being drugged by their neck on the back of trucks through some fucking dirt road in the South. That's what I think about when I hear that word. So, it hurts me to hear it, but I also feel like for all you who think that it's appropriate, like, where y'all at?
Where's Tom Hanks' son? Why isn't he trending?
Where's Chet Hanks right now?
But I also want to, I know that you don't think it is as relevant when I mentioned it earlier, but I've had to say, there's a lot of white people like Billie Holiday, a lot of retro and older white people. I don't know how many conversations I've had people listening to Strange Fruit and not knowing what that song's about and how it's a revelation to them. And I just find that so strange. What do you think she's singing about? Like, I don't know. Context is everything, but I don't know. It's disappointing.
So my next thought is just the actual word of like the idea of racism, because I think a lot of people feel like, and namely white people in America, feel like they're not racist because they don't use the N-word, they don't attend KKK white supremacist meetings, they don't have white hooded robes in their closet, so they're not racist. Or they have a black friend, or they, watch a Tyler Perry movie. It is not like white supremacy. It has like a range, and like bigotry, discrimination, it takes on many faces. Mm-hmm. And you need to do like personal inventory. Like there needs to be a checklist that you need to come up with through education to understand whether you truly walk that walk. Mm-hmm. Because to just say I'm not racist, to me, anytime a white person says to me they're not racist, you're racist, because like you should acknowledge that there are biases and that there is bigotry that exists and that you have to actively fight that. That's the answer you should be giving. Not like, no way am I racist.
Right. Well, and I think that's where if educating oneself is the first step, it's also then keeping account of how you are responding and reacting to people in public or in various situations. I think this woman in Central Park, Amy Cooper, I'm sure that was a fine white woman that thought that she wasn't racist, but to have a black man.
She's not a fine white woman.
Well, no, but I'm saying how she probably thought of herself. She probably thought of herself as I'm not racist.
A respectable, yeah.
Yeah, and if she has black friends, I hope they're fucking dragging her. But but when it came to a black man in a public place telling her she's not following the rules, look how she responded. That's what I'm talking about. I think that is the next step, is looking at, that's what a microaggression is you aren't realizing that you are having that response.
Yeah, and I have a lot of experience with that because of my profession, which I'm a hairstylist, if people don't know that. So I have a lot of experience working with, my main clientele would be like middle-aged white ladies. And I experience on a daily basis being spoken to like I'm less than a person. And those are microaggressions, mm-hmm. because they find me amusing. I think that I feel like an animal in a zoo. Like they wouldn't normally have access to someone like me in a controlled environment where they are in charge. Mm-hmm. So I get a lot of weird questions, a lot of weird things, and I think that it really is like, the new racism is the one that is these microaggressions that add up to an overall worldview that makes you think you're superior to other people. Mm-hmm. And the facts are the facts. Like white supremacy is like the number one culprit of homegrown terrorism in this country. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not Muslims, it's not people from it. So the shit is out of control.
Which, and on that note, homegrown terrorism, that's where we need to subvert this, if you see something, say something. As white people, we need to be policing each other.
Well, that's our last point, I think. Sorry. But yeah. But no, you're right. The next thing is violence. Mm-hmm. All I have to say is this is nothing new. Again, do your education, look up lynchings, look up how slaves were treated and bred. Like, this is nothing new. So for me, what really is bothering me about this recent sort of inflammation is that when I first saw the news articles about George Floyd, my first thought was obviously like, it's devastating, and also like, not again. Like, this is not new. And just because certain things go viral, this shit happens on a regular basis, and it has been happening forever. I know there are a lot of posts about, like, you know, old TV shows from the 90s and people's music, like referencing lyrics from like the early 90s, saying like it's still happening 30 years later. I mean, this has been like...
Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing was 1989, Rhythm Nation.
But you go back 100 years,
Emmett Till.
and then 100 years before that, this shit has been going on. But I think this is where it's important to talk about black women.
Yeah, and also how violence is not just physical.
No.
I think that, like we had recently reviewed On the Record, and Drew Dixon talking about the plunder of black women, that's allowing verbal assault against women as well. And like, because for some reason I keep being reminded in all of this, all of these goings on about where was the protest of that fucking white woman that called Michelle Obama an ape in heels during the 2016 election cycle, where like that brought tears to my eyes seeing that. Where was
the outrage?
There was outrage.
There was,
but not to the or all the shit against Leslie Jones in 2016 on Twitter. Like, that's disgusting. And why wasn't there pillaging then? To me, that was worth it.
Well, you know, it's like the people who seem to be outraged, it's like there just aren't enough. I mean, I don't know what's different about right now, and I, you know, mourn the loss of this man who did not need to, you know, obviously like was murdered senselessly
over
nothing.
Over allegations of a nonviolent crime, who was already handcuffed.
Even if he did try to spend 20 counterfeit dollars, like
during a pandemic,
like, it's just, I can't.
I know.
So the next topic are the protests, and I know this is like a controversial thing. Everyone's posting like shit to contradict everything else. All I have to say is, if, as a black person, 41 years of age, having grown up understanding the history, all I can say is I'm not surprised we didn't burn this bitch down sooner. So I'm not, you know, that's all I can say. That the anger is not misplaced. Mm-mm. The pain is not misplaced. People seem to be more worried about broken windows than broken necks. Like, I don't know how we haven't burned this country down to the ground sooner. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't pain me to see like black business owners who are affected, you know, people with good intentions who were affected, and seeing them out there crying and pleading. Of course, it's hard to see, but it's like, you know, we got to this point with centuries, right?
Yeah.
Of oppression, of abuse, violence. I really don't think this is an overreaction. Now, I do think people need to be out there protesting. I don't want to see people get hurt. Like, obviously the protesters, like, I don't want to see anyone get hurt, but this does not seem like an overreaction to me. I also wanted to mention, I think, like, when we talk about, you know, people love to throw around terms like PTSD and being triggered and anxiety, and it's like, you know, I don't know what is more triggering than this generational trauma that black people experience. I mean, I have trauma. I can't even watch, you know, as a person who has now made hundreds of videos about movies, I have a very hard time watching films set in certain eras and featuring certain topics because it's triggering. I don't like to see black people oppressed. I don't like watching things about the Holocaust. It's painful. It's painful. I can't even watch a fucking movie about it. So to think that this
and most of the popular representations of black people in American film are still slave movies.
So to know that it still happens, to see a black man senselessly murdered due to what was racism, like, it's too much. It's too much. So in the same way that people need their emotional support animals and they need therapy for this, and you're not allowed to say this because it's a trigger. I mean, again, I don't think that what we're seeing right now is an overreaction. And that's all I have to say. Like, you know, I don't support violence, but next, law enforcement.
Yeah.
I don't have any family members in law enforcement, but I can imagine that there's a lot of frustration because there are people who go into the service, which is a noble profession, to do good work, to help the people, to make a difference. There are. Mm-hmm. But you said something, another Chris Rock
reference, talking about how when these things happen, he acknowledges being a cop it's a hard, difficult job, and they don't get paid enough. But he also said the response that always seems to come up in instances like these are like, well, he was a bad apple, or there are a few bad apples, and it's like, okay, I think he makes a joke about, I've had a bad apple, it's a tart, it wasn't so bad. But also, that doesn't work for any other industry. You're not going to go into any airline and say, oh, we have a few bad apples that are pilots and they just have to fly a plane to a mountain every night. There should be zero tolerance. There's just...
Yeah, why are we protecting problematic law enforcement agents if they have multiple complaints, if they've been accused and there's evidence? Why are they on the force? We wouldn't tolerate, a teacher who diddled a little kid or
has been physically abusive with children. Yeah.
But somehow someone who actually has authority, power to, because cops have a lot of power. They're the ones who bring charges to people. Mm-hmm. It's a whole fucking problem. The system is a problem. But it's we have these people who have a lot of power and we don't curb or check their biases, which brings me to training. We're going to talk about solutions, which we have none, but I think one solution would be we need to flip law enforcement on its head. I don't understand why violence is always the answer. If George Floyd did attempt, if it was fraud, approach him. If he resists and runs, let him. You're going to catch him. Mm-hmm. It's not, there's video everywhere. People are watching. I don't understand why it's I just watched a video of a black man walking out of a store who had been accused of, there was a call about shoplifting and the cops who showed up assumed that it was the black man walking out, but it wasn't. And while he was walking away from them, not knowing that they were trying to get his attention, they drop kick his ass. And I'm thinking this man was minding his own business, walking calmly out of a store, clearly to his car. If they thought that he was resisting or running, they could have easily pulled up behind his car and stopped him. Why would you drop kick this man? Why would you have George Floyd on the ground, multiple officers kneeling on him? If he's in handcuffs, where's he going to go? Why is violence always the answer? Why is being aggressive the answer? Why is not... this brings me to the idea of why in my neighborhood, which is predominantly occupied by people of color, why don't we see cops patrolling the streets? Why don't I know any cops in my neighborhood besides them driving by slowly, glaring at me in my own fucking neighborhood where I spent a lot of money for this house and pay a lot of taxes, and I have these cops driving by looking at me like I'm a problem. Mm-hmm. It's just this approach needs to change now. We shouldn't be afraid of cops. We should embrace cops. I would love to have police officers in my neighborhood walking by. I sit by my front door every morning now that we're in quarantine, looking out the window. I would love to get to know my neighborhood cop. Offer them a cup of coffee. I don't understand why that can't be a thing. And the last thing we want to talk about is how do we move forward? Obviously we don't have the answers because I'd be selling them. Mm-hmm. But I think, for me as a black person, I know that the resolution to this can't come from black people. The ones being oppressed who are begging for equality and begging to not be treated less than human, whomever is willing to listen to me is not part of the problem.
Right.
So you're generally preaching to the choir. What we need are white people. So this gets back to all these white people on social media who want to post all these Black Lives Matters memes and all these images of, people who've been victimized. That's great. That's nice. But I really wonder your racist ass auntie, your racist ass grandma, your parents, when they say problematic shit, when they voted for a president who is clearly racist, mm-hmm. Do you confront them? Or do you still love them and go home and pretend like everything's okay and go home for the holidays and go for Sunday dinners and to me, it needs to start there. Don't tell me about anything. I already know there's a problem. I don't need to see your memes. I don't need to. You need to direct that shit to the people in your life, because if we're talking about white people who are problematic, then it's the white people who they have a connection to who can help them with that. I can't help you. So no one who's willing to listen to what I'm saying is watching this video right now. But perhaps a white person who made it to the end of this video, who does know family members and friends who are problematic, or even when they're out and about, speak up. I can't do it. I can't be in a public space and hear someone say something racist. I can't be at work and some woman speaks to me like I'm a servant. I can't say anything. I can't. I'll be arrested, knowing me, because I'll pop off. I'll get fired from work. I can't do it. But if you're that white lady or that white man sitting next to them or standing in line, or the other client in the other chair, you pipe up.
Right.
You say something.
Because at the end of the day, silence is complicity. And, you know, as being part of an interracial couple, I've been long aware of these issues, but we've been together 12 years now. And as the white person in this relationship, other white people, you know, they do say things to me. They do say things that they think they can say to me that they don't say to him. And it's my responsibility to say, I'm not cool with that. It's not that hard.
What I think is a way people can sort of move forward is to support black artists.
Yeah, I agree.
And what that really means is, like, if you're a white person who feels very disconnected from black American culture, like, you know, maybe you're like, you consider yourself like a liberal, progressive white person and you are appalled by what you're seeing right now, but you also live in an upper middle class neighborhood with no black people except your one black neighbor, you know, who happens to have a nicer house than you and drives a Tesla like you do, and you feel like you commiserate with them. That's not you understanding blackness, right? Like, you need to really try to look at the world from someone else's perspective. You referenced Charlemagne the God once, a radio personality, was talking about how his mom, who's an English teacher...
Yeah, I told him he needs to align himself with perspectives that don't pertain to, with people that don't pertain to him, because that's how you learn and grow. And I think it was in reference to Judy Blume. But
yeah, but as a black person, I was told, like, by my parents, that I need to understand how white America thinks. So it's important that I understand how people see me in order for me to move through this, you know, experience as, you know, with the least amount of harm as possible and being as successful as I can be. Like, I need to kind of understand how people view me. And I think the same is for white people who just are clueless. Like, you know, having that one black friend who you go to the gym with, or, you know, you like to listen to whatever's popular. I don't know what the kids listening to, Drake or The Weeknd, I don't know.
Kendrick.
Whatever. Who's the one, Megan Thee Stallion. You know, that doesn't make you sort of an arbiter of, like, black American culture.
No, not at all.
You're just, you know, you're just a pirate. Like,
yeah, and as a white person supporting black artists, like, you know, there's always that adage that black people don't support black things, which isn't true, but white people need to buy into black artistry. White people need to go see movies made by black people, starring black people, that aren't that aren't curtailed for them. Like, I don't know how many white people I've said that, oh, Tyler Perry's a crap filmmaker, but I've never seen a Tyler Perry film. Well, go and see, and maybe you'll be surprised. There's some that...
Read books by black authors.
Dr. Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison.
Go to, you know, seek out news outlets that, you know, have a black American perspective. You know, it's still the facts, but it's just like everything's skewed. So maybe look at how black people see this country. Maybe you'll have a better perspective. You know, the art of war, you know, because if you really have a problem with black people, then you need to, like, understand your enemy.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, even if you are a full-on racist, I feel like you still need to understand your enemy. And I would encourage you to do so, because you'd be very surprised. The one thing, I think sort of the hot button issue that we can hit on a little bit is reparations.
Sure.
I fully believe in reparations. I don't know how that would work, because we need to give back, you know, the indigenous people need all their shit back. The Mexicans who, you know, the region of Mexico that we stole from them, like, and then all the black people and their 40 acres and a mule. I don't know what would be left. So I don't know what we can do.
We could stop bailing out Wall Street for one.
You know, but all I know is that something big needs to happen. I know there's a comedian who has passed named Patrice O'Neal who said that black people shouldn't pay federal income tax. I fully support that.
I think that's a good
among
place to
other
start.
things. Yeah,
That's a good starting place.
Yeah, there needs to be an offering to acknowledge, like, shit is fucked up. This country is built. Like, systemic racism is real. Our entire system, again, educate yourself. Go look at the laws that were developed. Go look at how black people's liberties were squashed, specifically. A lot of the laws that we see today and a lot of the issues we have are the result of things that were designed to keep black people down.
Just look at the drug laws, but crack cocaine.
Drug laws, voting regulations, just so many things. So I think we need to acknowledge that in some way. I don't know what that is. I don't know how that would ever work, but that could be a solution. Go ahead.
Immersion therapy for white people might help.
Could you imagine making like white families move into black neighborhoods?
I don't know. Well, you know what?
They would love it.
Well, and speaking of black neighborhoods, speaking about property, like ensuring that black people have property, they've never had a chance to build wealth. But this also reminds me of the Lorraine Hansberry play Raisin in the Sun. Go back and watch that or read that and how prescient that is. Like, we've come some ways, but we have so far to go, and just look at that.
My final thought as it pertains to this is, as a person of color, I think I can speak for everyone in saying that as we, like, growing up, like, the culture is, like, we want to get along. I don't know, like, because I feel like when I think about conservative white people, racist ass white people, it's like they want to preserve this white way of life, right? Like, white is right. We want to keep our shit the way we have it. And they're afraid that, somehow, like, if black people are able to have equal rights, that we're somehow going to take something from them. The black people meetings I've attended, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about, like, how we're going to overturn the white man. It's more about how can we all live equally in peace. And I think that's why embracing black culture in a more healthy way, not appropriating it,
right, but
supporting it and watching the world through, various people of color's eyes, you will see that it really is about unity. It's about preserving the culture, unity, happiness. I want the same things that everyone else wants, right? Like, there isn't some insidious plan to, like, take over the country and kill every white person, and all that anger is very one-sided. So I feel like that's reassuring. So all you white people watching this, when you tell your racist ass family and friends, assure them that black people are not trying to take anything from them. That's all I have in this long ass video.
There's no other recommendations you have for?
Again, it's not my responsibility to teach anyone. If you want to learn more about the Black American experience, racism in America, there is the World Wide Web.
That's true.
And if you have the interwebs, you can get on there and you can type in those words and many articles will pop up. Read.
Yeah, read.
Even if half the shit you read is not true or, like, watered down, you will still be appalled. You will still get a very good understanding of where everyone's coming from. And it doesn't take that long. It's riveting because it's a fucking nightmare. You'll be riveted.
I recommend Black Like Me, a 1960s book by John Howard Griffin. It's about a white man that, as a social experiment, he turns his skin dark and documents how he's treated. Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, and also Richard Dyer's White, which I read back when I was an undergrad. And I think that was the first text I read that talked about how, since whiteness is considered the norm, we never define it. So that's what, like when you say, oh, that black man did something to me, but you don't race the white man because white is normal. Like, there's just a lot of eye-opening things that was 1997, but maybe are still very relevant, obviously.
All right, well.
But, like, after, I love you, and after 12 years together, you're my ride or die, and it's just, I don't want to imagine.
Hustle and flow. Okay.
I don't want to imagine a world where, you're suddenly going to be gone and a shitty act of violence, and I'm constantly reminded that could happen. But so,
like, all the black women out there with black sons, all the white, people give Kim Kardashian a hard time, but she did recently, like today, post something that I think really, was meaningful, and it's like, she does have black children, and with all her privilege, all her money, she still has to worry about her children. And so, I mean, it's affecting so many people, and it is scary, it's sad. I think we need more compassion. That's all I have to say.
We need to listen.
Yeah, I think we'll get back to movie reviews shortly. I'll probably post one shortly after I post this video. Because there are a couple in the can. But, you know, stay healthy.
But yeah.
You know.
Stay healthy, stay safe.
Take your vitamin D.
And
Ta-ta.
Condolences to George Floyd's family.
Yes.
Ahmaud Arbery's family, Breanna Taylor's family.
Fuck Amy
and
Cooper.
Fuck Amy Cooper. And countless others, too many to name.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye.